Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Tonight I've got 3 seriously creepy horror stories for you. These aren't just jump scares, they're the kind of stories that stay in your mind long after you've turned off your screen. We'll meet a young woman trapped in a hotel room that wants her soul, a rideshare passenger who realizes his driver isn't human, and new parents whose baby monitor reveals a presence far worse than a monster under the bed. So grab your headphones, dim the lights, and let's get started. But remember, you've been warned. Alright, ready for the first story? Let's go. Story 1. The Room That Calls You Back. Imagine booking a hotel room only to discover it doesn't exist on the hotel's records, and the room keeps calling your name. That's exactly what happened to Rachel. Rachel Davidson was 24, a grad student at Northwestern. She loved concerts, road trips, and spontaneous adventures. Late one Sunday night, she and her friend Emily were driving back to Chicago from a music festival up in Wisconsin. Rain hammered the windshield. Rachel's eyelids drooped as Emily scrolled her phone for nearby motels. Then Emily gasped, "Look, Rosewood Inn. It's cheap and only 5 minutes off the highway." Rachel shrugged. "Works for me." They pulled up to the Rosewood Inn. Its neon sign buzzed faintly. A single light glowed in the lobby. Inside, an older woman sat behind the front desk wearing a faded blouse. Her name tag said Martha. Martha barely looked up as Emily said, "We'd like a room for the night." Martha spoke in a soft, dusty voice. "We have one room left, room 308. She handed them an old brass key attached to a worn red tassel. Rachel felt a shiver as they climbed the creaky stairs. Room 308 was oddly pristine, crisp white beds, a floral curtain swaying gently, a giant painting of a lake over the bed. Emily collapsed onto her bed. I'm dead." Within minutes, she was snoring. Rachel lay awake, staring at shadows crawling across the ceiling. She kept hearing tiny splashes like water dripping somewhere far away. At exactly 3:08 a.m., the old rotary phone on the nightstand rang. Rachel jumped. She answered, "Hello?" A woman's voice whispered, "Rachel, come back to room 308 forever." Rachel slammed the phone down. She turned to Emily's bed. It was empty, sheets cold. Rachel called softly. No answer. She glanced at the painting of the lake and screamed, because in the painting, a girl was drowning, arms thrashing above the surface. And the girl looked exactly like Emily. Rachel grabbed her phone, but she had no signal. She ran into the hallway, heart pounding. She sprinted to the lobby. But the lobby was gone. Where the front desk had been, there was now a blank wall of old bricks. She turned back toward the stairs and saw room 308 standing open. Inside, she could hear Emily's voice. "Rach, come back to bed." Rachel screamed and ran. But every hallway turned her back to the same door, 308. She pounded on walls, tried to kick open windows. Nothing worked. Martha's voice whispered from the shadows, "Everyone who checks into room 308 belongs to Rosewood forever." Rachel fell to the floor sobbing. Suddenly, Emily was beside her, smiling gently. "It's okay, just come back to the room." Rachel tried to speak, but Emily pulled her to her feet, leading her inside 308. As the door closed, Rachel glanced back one last time. Outside the window, a black lake stretched to infinity. And in the reflection, Rachel saw herself drowning in the water. The next morning, a family stopped at the Rosewood Inn, but the clerk told them, "I'm sorry, there's no room, 308. Story 2. Rideshare From Nowhere. Have you ever gotten into a rideshare late at night and realized the driver might not even be human? That's what happened to Chris one night in Los Angeles. Chris Dwyer was 28. He worked long hours at a marketing firm in downtown LA. One Friday night, he stayed late to finish a client pitch. When he finally left the office, the streets were empty. It was almost 1:30 a.m. He pulled up the rideshare app. A gray Toyota Camry arrived in under 2 minutes. The driver lowered the window. Chris. Yeah. Hop in. Chris slid into the back seat. The driver wore a dark ball cap pulled low over his eyes. The car smelled faintly metallic. As they pulled away, the driver said nothing. Chris tried to make small talk. Long night for you too, huh? No response. Instead, the driver turned off the main road and headed into a deserted industrial area. Chris frowned. This isn't the way to Koreatown, man. Still no answer. Chris leaned forward. Hey, I said this isn't. Suddenly, the driver turned his head. Chris froze. The driver's face was completely smooth. No eyes, no nose, no mouth. Just pale, featureless skin. Chris jerked the handle to open his door, but the locks clicked shut. Then the driver spoke in a voice like distant static. We're almost home, Chris. Chris pounded on the window, screaming. Outside, the streetlights flickered and died. The world seemed to blur like a spinning camera lens. And then Chris was waking up in his own bed, gasping for breath. Morning sunlight streamed through his blinds. Was it a dream? But when Chris checked his arms, he saw faint bruises on his wrists, like someone had grabbed him. He opened his rideshare app. There was no record of any ride that night. Days passed. Chris couldn't shake the feeling he was being watched. Then one night his phone buzzed. An unknown number texted, "Thanks for the ride." Chris tried blocking the number, but messages kept coming. Nice place you've got? See you soon. Almost home. A week later, Chris came home to find his apartment door ajar. Inside, everything was perfectly untouched except his bathroom mirror. Written in the steam were the words, "We're almost home." The next day, Detective Reed called. There's been a string of missing persons, all people who took a rideshare late at night. Chris described the faceless driver. Reed went pale. This isn't the first time I've heard about him. Some say he's not human. He's something older, a collector of souls who drives people straight out of existence. Chris tried to laugh it off. That's crazy, man. But a week later, he disappeared. When the police checked his phone, the last message he'd sent said, "He's here. The driver's here." No one ever saw Chris again. So next time you call a rideshare after midnight, check your driver's face just to be sure. Story 3. Static in the baby monitor. Parents, what if the voice coming through your baby monitor wasn't your baby at all? Sarah and Tom Whitaker had been married 4 years. They lived in a cozy house outside Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Their daughter Lily was 18 months old, curly blonde hair, big blue eyes. Sarah loved to watch her sleep on the baby monitor every night. It was comforting. Until one night, at 2:43 a.m. static crackled through the monitor. Static sound. Then a man's voice whispered, "Sarah, she's awake." Sarah shot up in bed. Tom mumbled, "What's wrong?" Shh. Sarah pressed the volume button. The static returned. Then the voice whispered again, "Don't look under the crib." Sarah's heart pounded. She ran into Lily's room. The nursery was silent. Lily, slept peacefully. Sarah knelt to look under the crib. Nothing. When she came back, Tom stared at her. "Sarah, why were you talking to someone?" "What do you mean?" "You were in here whispering, 'Don't look under the crib.'" Sarah shook her head. "I never said that." The next night, Sarah heard giggling through the monitor. Then Lily's tiny voice whispered, "He says he's my friend." Shara felt sick. A week later, Lily started pointing at the dark corner of her room, laughing. Tom said, "Babe, it's probably just her imagination." Sarah insisted on moving the crib away from the wall. But that night, Lily's voice came through the monitor again. "Mommy, he wants you under the crib too." Sarah ran into the nursery. A dark shape scuttled beneath the crib. She screamed. Tom flipped on the light. Nothing there. But claw marks gouged the wood floor under the crib. Sarah started researching the house's history. Turns out in 1978, a man named Alan Bishop had lived there. He'd murdered his own infant daughter and hidden her body under the nursery floorboards. Sarah showed Tom the records. Tom went pale. "We have to leave." But that night, Tom woke up sitting in Lily's room, staring blankly at the crib. Sarah whispered, "Tom, are you okay?" Tom turned slowly. In a voice not his own, he said, "Sarah, it's your turn under the crib." The next morning, Tom remembered nothing. But Lily kept repeating, "Daddy's friend wants Mommy under the crib." The Whitakers moved out a month later. The new owners tore up the nursery floor and found a tiny skeleton still clutching a baby rattle. Thanks for staying with me through these chilling stories tonight. Which one scared you the most? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I love hearing your spooky experiences. And if you've ever had something you can't explain happen to you, maybe your own real-life horror story, let me know. Don't forget to hit like, share, and subscribe for more terrifying tales every week. Because remember, the darkness is never far away. Sleep tight if you can.